I never thought the day would come when my own daughter would look me in the eye and tell me I wasn't family enough for her wedding. But that's exactly what happened on a Tuesday afternoon that started like any other and ended with me questioning everything I thought I knew about motherhood. My name is Margaret, and for 58 years, I've believed that love meant sacrifice, that being a good mother meant putting your child's needs before your own, no matter the cost. I raised Ashley as a single mom after her father walked out when she was just 7 years old. 2 jobs, 60-hour weeks, ramen noodles for dinner, so she could have dance lessons. That was my life for 15 years, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. When Ashley was 12, she needed braces. The orthodontist quoted me $3,800, money I absolutely didn't have. I remember sitting in my car in that parking lot looking at my wedding ring, the last piece of my marriage I hadn't sold yet. 20 minutes later, I walked into the pawn shop next door. That ring had been my grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations. But Ashley's smile was worth more than any piece of jewelry. I worked double shifts at the diner and picked up weekend cleaning jobs just to keep us afloat. There were nights I'd fall asleep at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of me, calculator in my hand, trying to figure out how to make $30 stretch until Friday. Ashley never knew about those nights. I made sure she never saw me cry over the past due notices or the calls from creditors. When she got accepted to State University, I was so proud I couldn't stop crying. But the tuition was more than I made in 6 months. My car, a little blue Honda Civic that had been my first major purchase after the divorce, became the solution. I'd had that car for 8 years. It had taken me to job interviews, to Ashley's school plays, to grocery stores at midnight when she needed supplies for last-minute projects. I knew every sound it made, every quirk of the engine. The day I sold it, Ashley was at school. I didn't want her to see me hand over the keys to a stranger for $4,000, exactly what I needed for her first semester. I took the bus home that day, clutching the envelope of cash, telling myself it was worth it. Ashley's education was her ticket to a better life than mine. College graduation day was one of the proudest moments of my life. Watching Ashley walk across that stage in her cap and gown, knowing that every sacrifice had led to this moment, it felt like validation for every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every dollar I'd scraped together. She hugged me so tight that day and whispered, "Thank you, Mom. I couldn't have done this without you." After graduation, when Ashley was struggling to find her footing, I helped with her rent. When she wanted to take that photography course to boost her resume, I covered the cost. When she moved in with Brandon and they needed furniture, guess who showed up with a check? I never kept track, never asked for anything back. That's what mothers do. We give without expecting returns. When Brandon proposed to Ashley last Christmas, I was over the moon. She FaceTimed me from the restaurant, tears streaming down her face, showing off the ring. "Mom, he proposed! Can you believe it? I'm getting married!" The joy in her voice was infectious. I immediately started thinking about the wedding, about walking her down the aisle, about all the traditions I dreamed of sharing with my daughter. But somewhere between that magical engagement announcement and this devastating Tuesday afternoon, something changed. Or maybe nothing changed at all. Maybe I was just finally seeing clearly. The phone call came at 2:30 in the afternoon. I was folding laundry in my small apartment, the same apartment I'd lived in for 12 years because every extra dollar went to Ashley instead of to a bigger place for myself. Her name flashed on my phone screen and I smiled automatically, the way I always did when she called. "Hey, sweetheart," I answered, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder as I continued folding. "Hi, Mom. I need to talk to you about something important." Her voice sounded different, careful, rehearsed. The kind of tone people use when they're about to deliver news they know won't be well received. I set down the towel I was folding and gave her my full attention. "What's going on, honey?" "Brandon and I have been talking, and we've decided to keep the wedding really intimate, like super small and private." She paused, and in that silence I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Okay," I said slowly, waiting for her to continue. It's going to be just immediate family only. Brandon's parents, his grandmother who basically raised him, and maybe 2 or 3 of our closest friends. We want to keep it meaningful and personal, you know? I was quiet for a moment, processing her words. That sounds lovely, Ashley. Small weddings can be really special. Another pause. Then, so it'll be Brandon's immediate family, and since this is really his day too, we want to make sure his people are comfortable and that everything flows naturally. Of course, I agreed, still not understanding where this was heading. Mom, I hope you understand, but you're not going to be part of the ceremony. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually looked at the phone to make sure I'd heard correctly. I'm sorry, what? You're not immediate family to Brandon, and we really want to keep this to just the core people who are, central to both of our lives as a couple. I sat down heavily on my couch, the laundry forgotten. Ashley, I'm your mother. I know, Mom, and I love you so much, but Brandon's family doesn't really know you, and it might be awkward having you there when this is supposed to be about our new family unit. You understand, right? Understand. I understood that my daughter, the child I'd given up everything for, was telling me I wasn't important enough to witness the most significant day of her life. I understood that somehow, in her mind, I'd been relegated to a supporting character in the story I thought I was the co-author of. Mom, are you there? I'm here, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I knew you'd understand. You're always so supportive of what's best for me. This is what's best for Brandon and me as we start our marriage. What's best for her? How many times had I heard those words? How many times had I rearranged my life, my finances, my dreams around what was best for Ashley? And now apparently what was best for her was for me to disappear. When is the wedding? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. 3 weeks from Saturday. We're having it at Rosewood Manor. That beautiful place with the gardens? And we found this amazing photographer who specializes in intimate weddings. Everything's coming together perfectly. Rosewood Manor. I knew it well. I'd driven past it countless times, admiring the elegant stone building and manicured gardens. It was exactly the kind of place I'd always imagined Ashley getting married. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd be watching from the outside of this particular dream, too. That sounds beautiful, honey. It really is. Anyway, I should probably go. Brandon and I are meeting with the caterer tonight to finalize the menu. Love you, Mom. Love you too, I whispered to a dial tone. I sat in my living room for a long time after that call ended, staring at the pile of laundry in front of me. Towels and sheets that I'd wash and fold and put away, just like I'd been doing for decades. The same routine, the same small apartment, the same life I'd been living while Ashley built her new one, the one that apparently didn't have room for me. The cruel irony of it all didn't escape me. For 28 years, I'd been Ashley's immediate family. When she had nightmares, she called for me. When she broke her arm at 9 years old, she cried for me. When she graduated high school, I was the one she thanked in her speech. When had I stopped being immediate and started being peripheral? But that conversation was just the beginning, because 2 hours later, my phone rang again. Mom, hi, it's me again. Ashley's voice was bright and cheerful, as if our earlier conversation had never happened. Hi, sweetheart. No. So I was talking to Brandon about the wedding expenses, and we're running a little over budget on the catering. The menu we want is more expensive than we initially thought, but it's so perfect for what we're envisioning. I waited, already knowing where this was heading. I was wondering if you might be able to help us out with some of the costs. I know it's a lot to ask, but you've always been so generous, and we're just trying to make this day perfect. Perfect. She wanted me to help pay for the perfect day that I wasn't invited to. How much are we talking about? I asked. Maybe around $4,000? I know it's a lot, but think of it as an investment in my happiness, This is the only wedding I'll ever have. $4,000. That was 2 months of my salary at the diner. That was the money I'd been saving to finally replace my ancient couch, or maybe take a small vacation, the first real vacation I'd taken in over a decade. "Let me think about it and get back to you," I said. "Of course, take your time." "Well, not too much time. We need to confirm numbers with the caterer by Friday, but I know you'll come through for me. You always do." You always do. She was right about that. I always did come through for Ashley, even when it meant I went without, even when it meant putting my own needs last, even when it meant funding a celebration that I wasn't welcome to attend. After we hung up, I walked to my bedroom and opened the small safe I kept in my closet. Inside were my important documents, a little emergency cash, and a manila envelope I'd been hiding for 6 months. An envelope that contained receipts and confirmation numbers for payments I'd made in secret, planning the surprise of a lifetime for my daughter. 6 months ago, when Ashley first got engaged, I'd started planning. Not planning to interfere or take over, just planning to give her something beautiful. I knew money would be tight for them as a young couple, and I wanted to help in a way that would truly matter. I'd contacted Rosewood Manor directly and put down a deposit for their garden ceremony space. $12,000, my entire savings account, plus money I'd quietly borrowed against my retirement fund. I'd booked Eternal Moments Photography, the premier wedding photographer in the area, for $8,000. I'd even arranged for the deluxe floral package with bloom and blossom, $3,000 for bouquets, centerpieces, and ceremony decorations. $23,000 total, more money than I'd ever spent on anything in my life, including my own wedding 30 years ago. Money that represented years of careful saving, of buying generic groceries and wearing the same clothes season after season. Money that I'd planned to surprise Ashley with on her engagement party, telling her that her dream wedding was already paid for. But then Brandon's family got involved in the planning. Ashley started talking about what Brandon wants, and Brandon's vision, and what works best for Brandon's family. The engagement party got canceled because Brandon's parents wanted something smaller. The guest list got cut because Brandon preferred intimate gatherings. And now, I wasn't even invited to the wedding I'd secretly funded. I pulled out the receipt for the venue deposit and stared at it. $12,000, paid in full. The transaction date showed it was exactly 173 days ago, the same day Ashley had called me, sobbing with happiness about Brandon's proposal. That night, I'd been so excited I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining the look on Ashley's face when I told her that her mother, the woman who'd worked multiple jobs and sold her possessions to give Ashley every opportunity, had found a way to give her the wedding of her dreams. Now, sitting in my small bedroom, looking at receipts for a wedding I wouldn't attend, I felt something I'd never experienced before in all my years of motherhood. I felt like a fool. The next few days passed in a blur of painful realizations. I kept replaying Ashley's words, "You're not immediate family to Brandon." The more I thought about it, the more it stung. I'd been immediate family to Ashley for 28 years. I'd been her everything when she had nothing. But now that she had Brandon, now that she had his family and his approval and his vision for their life together, I'd been reclassified. I was no longer immediate. I was extended. I was optional. I was the person you called when you needed money, but not when you needed witnesses to your joy. Friday morning came, and Ashley called right on schedule. "Mom, have you thought about the catering costs? We really need to give the caterer an answer today." I looked around my apartment, at the secondhand furniture I'd never replaced, at the walls I'd never repainted, at the small life I'd built around making sure Ashley could have a bigger one. "Yes," I said quietly, "I've thought about it." And, for a moment, I almost told her. I almost explained that I'd already paid for most of her wedding, that the money she was asking for was on top of $23,000 I'd already spent. I almost told her that while she was worried about $4,000 for catering, I'd quietly handled 60% of her total wedding expenses. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the growing realization that Ashley saw me as a bank rather than a person. Or maybe it was the first stirring of something I'd never allowed myself to feel before: anger. "I'll transfer the money today," I said instead. "Oh my God, Mom, thank you so much. You're the best. Brandon is going to be so relieved. This is going to make everything perfect." Perfect. There was that word again. Everything would be perfect, except for the fact that the person who'd made it possible wouldn't be there to see it. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and did something I'd never done before. I calculated exactly how much I'd spent on Ashley over the years, not the daily expenses of raising a child. Those were just part of being a mother, but the extras, the sacrifices, the times I'd gone without so she could have more. The numbers were staggering. College tuition, rent assistance, car repairs, medical bills I'd covered when she was between jobs, Christmas gifts, birthday celebrations, the photography course, furniture for her apartment, clothes for job interviews, emergency money when her roommate moved out unexpectedly. It added up to more than I'd spent on myself in the past decade. And now, the wedding. $27,000 total when I included the catering money she'd requested. I wasn't angry about the money itself. I'd given it freely out of love. But I was starting to understand that Ashley had come to see my generosity as an entitlement rather than a gift. Somewhere along the way, my sacrifices had stopped being appreciated and started being expected. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good bottle I'd been saving for Ashley's engagement celebration, and I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about Ashley's needs or Ashley's problems or Ashley's dreams. I was thinking about mine. When had I stopped having dreams of my own? When had I stopped being Margaret and started being just Ashley's mom? When had I accepted that my role was to provide and support and sacrifice without ever expecting to be valued in return? The answer came to me as I watched the last light fade from the sky. I'd never expected to be valued because I'd never demanded it. I'd made myself so available, so selfless, so endlessly giving that Ashley had learned to take me for granted. And now she was planning the most important day of her life, and it hadn't even occurred to her that I might want to be there. Not because she was cruel or thoughtless, but because I'd trained her to think of me as a resource rather than a person. The wedding was in 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to decide what kind of person I wanted to be for the rest of my life. The mother who continued to give endlessly while being pushed further and further to the margins of her daughter's life, or the woman who finally learned to value herself the way she'd taught others to value her. As I sat there in the growing darkness, I realized that for the first time in 28 years, I was going to choose myself. The morning I found the receipt in my purse was the morning everything crystallized. I'd been carrying my usual Saturday errands bag, the worn leather purse I'd had for 8 years because buying a new one always seemed less important than whatever Ashley needed at the time. I was looking for my grocery list when my fingers brushed against the folded paper tucked into the side pocket. Rosewood Manor, venue deposit confirmation, paid in full, $12,000. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot staring at that piece of paper like it held all the answers I'd been searching for. The date stamp showed it was exactly 6 months and 4 days old. I remembered that day so clearly. Ashley had called me at work, sobbing with joy about Brandon's proposal. I'd been so excited I'd left the diner early despite losing half a day's tips and driven straight to the wedding venue I'd always admired. The woman at Rosewood Manor had been so kind. "What a lucky daughter you have," she'd said as I signed the contract. Not every mother would surprise their child with their dream venue. I'd smiled and nodded, already imagining Ashley's face when I revealed the surprise. Now, holding that same receipt, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not the familiar warmth of anticipation I'd carried for months, but something colder, something that tasted like clarity. My phone buzzed. Ashley's name flashed on the screen. "Hi, Mom. Quick question. Do you know if anyone's taken care of tipping the venue coordinator? Brandon's mom mentioned it, and we want to make sure we don't double tip or miss anyone important. I stared at the receipt in my hand. The venue coordinator, the one I'd already discussed tipping arrangements with when I'd made the booking, the one who had my credit card on file for the final payment. "I'm not sure," I said slowly. "You'd have to check with whoever booked the venue." Right, that was Brandon's mom. She's so organized, she handled all the vendor communications. Anyway, I should run. We're doing a final walkthrough this afternoon. Love you. Brandon's mom handled all the vendor communications. For the venue I'd paid for the photographers I'd hired, for the flowers I'd ordered. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes after hanging up, watching people come and go with their shopping carts and their ordinary Saturday problems. A young mother struggled to load groceries while her toddler had a meltdown. An elderly man carefully counted coins at the checkout. Normal people living normal lives, probably never wondering if their children saw them as ATMs with legs. That's when it hit me, the full weight of what was happening. I wasn't just being excluded from Ashley's wedding. I was funding a celebration that another woman was getting credit for organizing, while my own daughter treated me like a stranger who occasionally sent checks. I drove home and pulled out every receipt, every confirmation email, every piece of documentation related to Ashley's wedding. Spread across my kitchen table was the evidence of my secret generosity. Rosewood Manor, $12,000. Eternal Moments, photography, $8,000. Bloom and Blossom Florals, $3,000. And the catering money Ashley had requested, another $4,000 I'd transferred just days ago. $27,000, more than I'd ever spent on anything, more than my car was worth, more than I had in my checking account after all these payments. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my recent calls with Ashley. Every conversation for the past month had been about the wedding, her excitement, her stress, her needs. Not once had she asked how I was doing. Not once had she mentioned missing me at the ceremony. Not once had she seemed to consider that I might have feelings about being excluded, but she'd asked for money. Twice. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. The numbers told a story I hadn't wanted to see before. My savings account, once a modest but respectable nest egg built over years of careful living, was nearly empty. My retirement fund had been tapped. My credit card balance had crept up as I'd used it to cover my regular expenses while diverting my income to Ashley's wedding. At 58 years old, I'd put my financial security at risk to pay for a party I wasn't invited to. The phone rang. Ashley again. "Mom, I'm so excited. We just finished the walkthrough at Rosewood Manor and it's absolutely perfect. The coordinator showed us exactly how they'll set up the ceremony space, and the gardens are going to be gorgeous. Brandon's mom had such great taste choosing this place." Brandon's mom, the woman getting credit for my gift. "That's wonderful, honey," I heard myself say. "And the photographer met us there. She's amazing, so professional and creative. Brandon's mom really did her research finding these vendors. Everything's going to be exactly like we dreamed. Like we dreamed. Ashley and Brandon dreamed, with vendors I'd hired and paid for being credited to someone else entirely." "Ashley," I said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about me being there? At the wedding?" There was a pause. "Mom, we talked about this. It's going to be really small and intimate." "I know what you said, but I'm asking if you ever think about it. If any part of you wishes I could be there." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, you're being kind of dramatic. This isn't about you. This is about Brandon and me starting our marriage the way that feels right for us. This isn't about you." Those 5 words crystallized everything I'd been feeling but couldn't name. My daughter's wedding wasn't about me. Fair enough. But my presence at my daughter's wedding had never even been considered worth discussing. My feelings about missing the most important day of her life weren't worth acknowledging. And yet my money, that was absolutely about me. That was essential. "You're right," I said. "It's not about me. I hope you have a beautiful day." After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about the woman I used to be, before I became someone whose primary value was her willingness to give. I remembered being 28 years old, Ashley's age, excited about my future, making plans that centered around my own dreams. When had I stopped being a person with her own life and started being a supporting character in someone else's story? I thought about my mother, dead now for 10 years. She'd been a strong woman who'd taught me that being selfless was the highest virtue a mother could achieve. A good mother puts her children first, she used to say. That's what love looks like. But had my mother ever felt invisible? Had she ever felt like her children saw her as a resource rather than a person? I couldn't remember asking her about her dreams, her disappointments, her fears. I'd seen her as mom, not as a woman with her own inner life. Maybe I'd learned too well. I walked to my bedroom and opened the jewelry box on my dresser, the same wooden box I'd had since I was 16. Inside were the few pieces I'd kept over the years, the ones I hadn't sold during Ashley's childhood emergencies. My mother's pearl earrings, a small gold bracelet from my college graduation, a silver necklace I'd bought myself after my first promotion at the diner. At the bottom of the box was something I hadn't looked at in years, a small notebook I'd used to write in during Ashley's elementary school years. I'd started it during a particularly difficult period when she was struggling in school, and I was working 3 jobs to keep us afloat. My therapist, the one I'd seen for exactly 6 sessions before deciding I couldn't afford it, had suggested I write down my thoughts as a way to process stress. I opened the notebook to a random page and read in my own handwriting. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing, like I exist only in relation to Ashley's needs. I know that's what being a mother means, but I wonder if there's supposed to be something left of me too. I'd written that 12 years ago. 12 years of feeling like I was disappearing, and I'd never done anything about it. I flipped through more pages, reading entries about exhaustion, about worry, about dreams I'd put on hold. One entry from Ashley's senior year of high school caught my eye. She got into state. I'm so proud. She'll have opportunities I never had. The college fund isn't enough, but I'll figure it out. I always do. Maybe after she graduates, I'll take that art class I've always wanted to try. Or maybe I'll travel somewhere, just me, when she's settled. She was settled now. She had Brandon, his family, a career, a life that didn't really include me except when she needed financial support. And I still hadn't taken that art class. I still hadn't traveled anywhere alone. I'd kept waiting for permission to live my own life. The notebook was full of dreams deferred, needs ignored, a woman slowly erasing herself in service of someone else's happiness. Reading it was like looking at a map of how I'd gotten to this place where my own daughter could exclude me from her wedding and ask for money in the same week without seeing any contradiction. I closed the notebook and looked around my small bedroom. At the secondhand furniture, the clothes I'd owned for years, the life I'd kept small so Ashley's could be big. I'd been so busy being a good mother that I'd forgotten to be a complete person. That night, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to stop funding my own disappearance. The next morning was Sunday. I woke up early, and instead of my usual routine of housework and meal prep, I drove to the lake outside town. It was a place I'd always loved but rarely visited. There was always something more important to do, usually related to Ashley's needs. I sat on a bench overlooking the water and called Rosewood Manor. "Hello, this is Margaret Thompson. I have a booking for next Saturday under Ashley Thompson Williams. I need to discuss making some changes." The coordinator was the same woman I'd worked with 6 months ago. "Of course, Miss Thompson. We're so excited for Ashley's big day. How can I help you?" "I need to cancel the booking." There was a pause. "Cancel? The wedding is next Saturday. Are you sure everything's okay?" "I'm sure. I need to cancel everything associated with my payments, the venue, the photography, the florals, all of it." "Miss Thompson, I have to tell you, with such short notice, there will be significant cancellation fees. We're talking about potentially losing most of your deposits." "I understand." And the couple, Ashley and Brandon, are they aware of this decision? This is going to cause them tremendous stress. I looked out at the lake, at the peaceful water reflecting the morning sun. They'll figure it out. They always do. The conversation took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of phone calls to vendors, of cancellation policies being explained, of attempts to talk me out of what they clearly saw as a rash decision. By the end of it, I'd lost about $8,000 in deposits and fees. But I'd also reclaimed my power. I sat by the lake for another hour, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Not happiness exactly, but something like peace. For the first time in decades, I'd made a decision based on what I needed rather than what someone else wanted from me. My phone rang twice during that hour. Ashley both times. I didn't answer. When I got home, there were 4 voicemails waiting. The first, "Mom, call me back. Something's wrong with the wedding vendors. They're saying there's been a cancellation, but that doesn't make sense." The second, "Mom, seriously, where are you? Brandon's mom is trying to figure out what happened with the venue. They're saying someone canceled our booking, but we never canceled anything. Call me back right now." The third, "Mom, I don't know what's going on, but we need to fix this. The wedding is in 6 days. 6 days. Call me back." The fourth, "Mom, please, I'm scared. Everything's falling apart and I don't understand why. I need you. I need you." Finally, she'd said it. But it was too late for the wrong reasons. I didn't call her back that day. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I took care of myself. I ran a bath with the expensive bath salts I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. I ordered Chinese food from the nice place instead of cooking. I watched a movie I wanted to see without checking my phone every 10 minutes. Monday morning, Ashley showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find her standing in my hallway, still in her pajamas, hair pulled back in a messy bun, eyes red from crying. She looked young and lost and desperate, exactly the way she'd looked at 7 years old when she'd broken my favorite vase and thought the world was ending. "Mom," she said, and her voice cracked. "What did you do?" I stepped back to let her in. She walked into my living room like she was seeing it for the first time, really seeing the small space, the worn furniture, the careful way I'd arranged my few nice things to make the most of what I had. "I canceled some things," I said calmly. "Some things? Mom, you canceled my wedding. The venue, the photographer, the flowers, everything's gone. Brandon's mom spent all day yesterday trying to figure out what happened. She's been calling vendors, trying to find alternatives, but everything good is booked for next Saturday. I'm sure she'll figure something out. She seems very capable." Ashley stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Mom, what is wrong with you? This is my wedding we're talking about." "Yes," I said. Your wedding that I'm not invited to. We talked about this. It's not personal. It's just what, Ashley? Just that I'm not important enough to witness the most significant day of your life? Just that you can ask me for thousands of dollars to pay for a party I'm not welcome at?" Her face went pale. You paid for things?" I walked to my kitchen table where the receipts were still spread out. I picked them up and handed them to her. $12,000 for the venue, $8,000 for photography, $3,000 for flowers, $4,000 for catering. That's $27,000, Ashley. More money than I've ever spent on anything, including my own wedding. She looked at the receipts like they were written in a foreign language. But Brandon's mom said she booked everything. Brandon's mom took credit for everything I paid for, and you let her, because it was easier than acknowledging that your mother, the one who's not immediate family enough to attend, made your dream wedding possible. Ashley sat down heavily on my couch, the receipts scattered in her lap. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know you'd paid for all this. But you did know you'd asked me for catering money the same day you uninvited me from your wedding. You did know that you called me when you needed something, but not once in the past month asked how I was doing or if I had feelings about being excluded. Tears started streaming down her face. I thought you understood. I thought you'd be okay with it. Why would you think I'd be okay with missing your wedding, Ashley? Because you're always okay with everything. You're always supportive and understanding and willing to help. You never complain or ask for anything. I thought this would be the same. I sat down across from her, seeing my daughter clearly for perhaps the first time in years. She wasn't cruel or calculating. She was thoughtless in the way that people become when someone has trained them to expect endless giving without reciprocation. I never complain, I said slowly, because I taught you that my needs don't matter. I never ask for anything because I taught you that my role is to give, not receive. I'm always understanding because I trained you to think of me as someone who exists to make your life easier. I don't think of you that way. Ashley, you called me on the same day to uninvite me from your wedding and ask me for money. If that doesn't tell you how you think of me, I don't know what would. She was crying harder now. But I love you, Mom. You know I love you. I know you love who you think I am. You love the mom who never says no, never has needs, never expects anything in return. But I'm a person, Ashley. I'm a woman with feelings and dreams and limits. And I've spent so many years pretending I don't have those things that even I forgot they existed. So you destroyed my wedding to make a point. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised, this person I'd given everything to, and felt something I'd never allowed myself to feel before, disappointment. I didn't destroy your wedding, honey. I stopped paying for a party I wasn't invited to. There's a difference. She stood up abruptly. I need to go. I need to figure out how to fix this. Ashley, I called as she reached the door. Do you want me at your wedding? She turned around, her hand on the doorknob. What? It's a simple question. Not whether Brandon wants me there, not whether his family would be comfortable, not whether it fits your vision. Do you want your mother at your wedding? She stood there for a long moment, and I could see the struggle on her face. The part of her that had been shaped by years of putting other people's needs first warring with whatever small voice inside might have actually wanted me there. It's complicated, she finally said. No, I replied. It's not. She left without another word. I watched from my window as she got into her car and drove away, probably heading to Brandon's parents' house to figure out how to salvage her wedding weekend. I felt sad, but I also felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. I felt proud of myself. For the first time in 28 years of motherhood, I'd chosen my own dignity over my daughter's immediate happiness. And surprisingly, the world hadn't ended. That afternoon, I did something I'd been putting off for months. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, the one who'd been asking me to join her book club for years. Then I looked up information about the community college art classes I'd been thinking about since Ashley was in high school. Finally, I opened a new savings account, one with only my name on it, and deposited the money I'd been planning to use for Ashley's next emergency. The wedding was in 5 days. Ashley would figure something out, or she wouldn't. Either way, it was no longer my problem to solve. For the first time in decades, I was going to see what it felt like to put myself first.